Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sandy Allnock. I'm an artist and I work in a lot of different mediums on a lot of different kinds of projects. And the medium you're going to see today is one that I have not had on this channel before. And I'm excited to try something old and new. And I say old because back when I was in college in the 1980s, I know that makes me very old. In the 80s, I was almost going to be a printmaking major. I was much more into etching and intaglio prints at the time, not probably going to get back into that anytime soon. But block printing is something that I remember doing, having a lot of fun with, and I've wanted to send prints out to my patrons. And getting back into it has required a relearning of how to carve. I haven't done that in decades. This is part one of a two-part series on block printing. And in this one, we're going to focus on small prints made with pink erasers. We're going to start by just doing a quick survey of materials you need, because basically all you need is something to cut with and something to cut into. And I'll cover the Speedball set and the Flexcut. That's a budget type of item. And then the Flexcut I find works better, but it's more expensive. We'll talk about sharpening toward the end of the video, because you need sharp tools, something to print on. I'm just going to print on sticky notes. And then you'll need some erasers. You can get them at the dollar store. You can get pink pearl erasers, which have rounded edges or squared off edges on these Amazon ones. You'll need something to print with, an ink or something. Can be just stamping inks, work just great. And then some cutting tools. So scissors, something to poke with. A knife just helps to get little bits off that get in your way. A pencil to make little stabby stars in the sky. And then something to do sketches with. I recommend doing sketches before you try making a print. And we'll talk about why in the design section. So this one is going to be an undesigned one. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just took one of the pink pearl erasers and started drawing on it. You can put a border around your design or not, depending on what you want for your look for yours. On this one, I thought a border would be nice. And I'm going to add a hillside with kind of lines indicating there's some kind of a field, so I can make a tiny landscape. And then I'll add a sunshine up in the open area at the top. So this is what it looks like after it's done. I tend to scribble in the part that's going to be dark, that's going to be printed in ink, so I remember which part I'm carving and which part I'm not. But let's look at the Speedball tool set. It's the inexpensive one, and I'll show you a couple things that I had to learn because I struggled with it at first. The nibs are all in the body of it. You can see you take that cap off, and the inside of this drove me crazy because if it gets off a little bit, if somehow things are off, you'll have to take this off. Just take this top part off and you'll see inside this little piece. And it's got a half circle around the outside edges. The half circle on the left is where you put the nib in. You put that into that section. So you need that to be open. And if for some reason when you're putting your nibs in, they get loose or that the thing won't tighten down, just take that apart and put it right back together. I didn't find I had to do anything with it, but sometimes this one just acts a little funky. So pick whatever nib you're going to use, whatever tip you need, and then place it in there, tighten it down, and make sure it's not going to wiggle. Because if it wiggles, you need to take that thing apart and put it back together because you need it to be really stable. For very basic carving, you want to stick the tip of it, which is very sharp, into the surface of the eraser and then go along whatever lines you're going to use. Now, my hand is not in a great place, my left hand, because if I slip, I'm going to cut my hand. I'm going very slowly. This is real-time footage. I'm not going fast. If you go fast, you're going to take the chance at slipping. You also don't want your first prints to have any chance of getting your hand, because until you feel how much resistance you get from the eraser, you won't know whether you're going to have that tendency to just kind of push and it might slip. So I am still getting back into safety mode. Like, I just can't figure out how you hold these tiny erasers without causing trouble, other than I'm going really, really slow. When I was doing lino blocks in college, we had a little gizmo that I'm going to be trying to make before I share my next video on making larger lino blocks. And so I am going to show you that thing because I think it's adaptable to use for erasers, even though it's going to be made for larger blocks. And that will help me, I think, keep my fingers safe. But if you're going to not make that thing, just be careful and don't point your blade at your hand like I'm doing right here. And don't hold your breath. I did not cut myself during this video. I did not get hurt. So I'm going to do my print. And this is after doing some fixing to it, so I didn't want to include all that footage. But when you do a print, you may find there's a little spot you need to fix. Just go recarve that section and work on it until you're happy with your print. So to take this apart, you just take out your tip and put all of these back in, remembering that the tips are sharp. They should be sharp. And if they're not sharp, you're not going to get much cutting done. So make sure that you do keep them nice and sharp. And we'll talk about that at the end of this video. Before I get going on carving the other 3 erasers that I want to show you, I want to talk a bit about planning a design. I sat down for, I don't know, quite some time, over a couple of weeks, and just kept doing sketches. Because when you're trying to do some carving, you need to figure out the positive and negative. And if you struggle with negative drawing in the first place, this process of sketching is going to be important. So you figure out which part is going to be raised, because that's the part that's going to get ink on it, and which part is going to be lowered because it will not get ink on it. And then when you're thinking about that, which one is going to be cuttable? Which one can you actually do at this small size? Because there's a lot of these that are completely impossible, completely and totally. And I have like 4 pages of these, and a lot of them are going to have to wait for me to work on a larger block, because I just can't get into this kind of detail on something that small, at least not right now. There might be some people who do amazing work and can cut really teeny tiny things. I am not at that point right now. So I've got another page that I'm starting. What I did was mark in pencil the size of my eraser. Now, each brand of eraser might be slightly different, but they're about 3/4 inches wide by about 2 inches tall. You could also make other shapes out of these. So you can cut a square one if you want a square design, that sort of thing. But I just drew a whole bunch of boxes so I can just doodle and draw and figure out what the heck I want to do. So I decided I wanted to come up with a couple designs I could do here on YouTube that will illustrate a few things. And one would be if you just want to have a whole bunch of leaves. Fall is coming, so this one might be nice to color in with markers or watercolors or something with the open parts of the leaf or the background. So you have to decide, do you want the leaves to be black or do you want the background to be black? And sometimes what I'll do is, drawing them in with a pencil, I'll color in the background and say, do I like that? Do I not like that? And this one I decided I want to see what it looks like if the leaves are the black part. So I divided it in half. And on the top section, I could fill in the leaves themselves and figure out whether or not I like that better. You could also decide that you want to do it half and half, because that could be interesting too. But one of the things you'll have to think about on a design like this is cutting around those leaves and around those stems. Stems are smaller, so they're going to be a little bit harder. And depending on your skill level, that might be too much for, like your very first print might be a little too hard. So come up with something simpler. And it is often simpler to carve a shape into a flat piece of pink eraser than it is to carve the shape around it. And I'll show you what I mean when we get to carving this one, because though I'm, drawing with my black pen as though these are all going to be raised on the surface. So if you put any color in it, it would be color underneath of that in the background. I decided by the time I got to carving it that I was going to do the opposite because I wanted to show you the easier way. The harder way is going to be going around the stems. But at least this gives me something to work with, and it's now in my sketchbook. And if I decide I want to do something similar to that, this might serve as a trigger. So keeping a sketchbook with all your ideas, rejected or not, is a good thing. Now, I started drawing the Eiffel Tower, but I was trying to draw it from memory. So the one on the left is not looking at all like the Eiffel Tower because I was like, I think it's tall and it kind of flares out at the bottom and there's some horizontal parts, but I forgot there's that iconic round bit at the bottom because I went and looked when my first one didn't look right. I went and looked up a picture of the Eiffel Tower and I thought, okay, I should probably like look at reality here. So, in addition to deciding that I would go look up what the real Eiffel Tower looks like, I also decided I was not going to put those little, I don't know what you call them, little rays coming out from the top, because I wanted to show you something different in this one when we get to the carving. So, I'm going to do stars in the sky instead. And it could serve as snow. So, if you want to use something like this to make a snowy design for winter, you could do that. But here, what I'm doing is making the Eiffel Tower the thing that will be carved out and the background not carved out. So the background will be raised and the image itself will be lowered. You could do it the opposite way. You could cut around that Eiffel Tower, but it would be really hard to cut around stars. So I can poke stars into that, but I can't cut around stars. So putting a night sky in there is better. And then I doodled in a little something at the bottom. I wasn't sure how to put trees or people or whatever down there, but I just did a little bit of doodling to remind myself to do something at the base. You could even skip the things at the base. And then I got a white Acrylic pen, which covers most things. It doesn't do a great job over Sharpie. It's one of the few things that it doesn't do great at, but you can at least see your lines better than with a gel pen. And you can adjust the shape of the Eiffel Tower, that sort of thing, because the whole idea here is to get that black and white idea for what is going to be raised and what is going to be lowered. Now, if you wanted to, you could draw this again with the white parts being black. And then maybe you want to do the raise around the top. So you could do like 5 versions of it to try to decide which one is going to be easiest to carve. And I don't say always the easiest. Right now, I'm looking at the easiest because I'm thinking about trying to make this simple for people who've never done this kind of thing before. Um, but for me, it's also in figuring out what techniques I want to use. Now, here's one that just says, for you. I wanted to do something with letters on it because when you do your printing, everything's going to be upside down. You need to design it backwards, but you're not going to design it by drawing your 4 backwards. So I'm going to show you how, when we do the transfer, that this can be changed into something that can be flipped backwards without much effort at all. So I decided I was going to do half and half. I wanted to do the 4 at the top and the U at the bottom, but one would be the 4 would be raised and the U would be lowered. So I'm going to put a background around the U and no background around the 4. Now, one reason for that is that I can go around all those straight lines in the 4 with a simple cut. Well, I shouldn't say simple cut, but a bunch of simple cuts. And the U, I only have to do 2 cuts for the 2 sides of the U and then a curve for the bottom. And so it makes the U a little bit easier probably to carve since it's got that just 2 sides to it and then the U part at the bottom. You could use this for a tag for your holiday gifts or something. To transfer your designs onto the surface that you're going to carve. And this is the same process for a large lino piece as it is for an eraser. Take a piece of tracing paper and put it over top and draw around it. You can trace it. Now you could trace the outside edges of this if you would like. Or if it, depending on your design, if you can just fill in with pencil over the whole thing, then you can do that and you'll see how that transfers when we get into that section of this video in just a minute. You can also trace around absolutely all of the lines, all of the edges. And the more detail you do this tracing in, the more detail you'll get onto the eraser itself. So here I'm going to go around all of the lines around the letters, around the outside, etc. And I was debating while I was working on this whether I was going to do the leaves or not. At first I thought maybe I won't. This video is going to get really long, but I think the value in doing it is enough that what the heck, I might as well do all three since I've designed them for you and discussed them. So I'll do the same thing here and trace around the leaves, but here I'm going to just trace around the outside edges of the leaves themselves instead of filling them all in, because then I'll get those lines when I transfer it onto the eraser. To transfer these over, just flip it upside down, and then you want to press on the back of it. Now, some people will do that with a spoon so they don't get graphite all over everything. I didn't want to get out a spoon or something, so I'm just going to use my pencil to draw on the back side, and that pushes the graphite from the front side that has my nicer lines, so I can kind of scribbly here, pushes the front side onto the eraser. And if you have some spots that you need to fix, you can adjust those. This one is going to be done on the Amazon one that has more squared off lines. And this one I'm going to put onto the pink pearl eraser that has rounded edges. And on this one, I'm going to even get looser with it. And I'm just going to scribble over the whole thing because it's still going to push that graphite onto the surface. It's going to transfer it. The for you definitely has to be flipped backwards since the letters aren't going to read right when we print them. So flipping the paper upside down really makes a difference on something like this. Now, the eraser that I'm using here is one of the Amazon ones, and it's a different size than I measured because I measured originally for the pink pearl erasers. They're a little bit longer. So I had to adjust just slightly since I'm using both size erasers. And then I had to just draw in the borders myself and kind of clean up the edges. Now, if you end up with too many pencil lines and you've gone a little bit bananas on trying to fix something in your drawing as it got transferred, if it gets too visually confusing, don't just throw the eraser away. I didn't find that I could erase from the eraser. So if there's pencil lines on there you want to get rid of, some people have said, and I haven't tried it, that you could wash the eraser. I don't know how long that would take to dry or what it would do to it, so I didn't try it, but you could attempt that. I would just switch to like a Sharpie and then start drawing things in with the Sharpie. But here, to remember which parts are raised and which are lowered on this one, I didn't want to get confused, so I colored it in for myself just with pencil. Now, you could color that in with pen just as easily if you want something nice and crisp, because pencil is going to be a little softer. For these next carvings, I'm going to use the Flexcut tool set. And this one has 4 tips instead of 5, and it is more expensive, but look at the handle. It's a completely different way to assemble this thing. And these are so much easier to put in a new tip. I mean, it's way easier, and they're just these flat things. They slip into the slit and they stay there. And the tools themselves, that it feels good in my hand. I just like the way that it works while I'm cutting. So first I'm going to start by cutting the simple leaves. When you're cutting a shape, and remember we're going to lower the leaves themselves and leave raised the background. So I'm going to go around each one of the leaves with the thinnest of the tips and just try to make an outline around them. You can also do some of that with an X-Acto knife. Don't cut all the way through the rubber. The more you cut through the eraser itself, the more you make it unstable. And the different types of tips that you get on in your set, each one, typically, at least the Speedball and the Flexcut, they have some rounded ones, they have some V-shaped ones, they have some that are wider and some that are not as wide. And you'll just have to learn from practice which ones make the most sense. but I just keep going back and forth between them because these are super easy to switch back and forth. The Speedball is just much harder. So once I cut out all the holes for the leaves and the stems, I could easily just take my ink pad and press down on it. Make sure you press down on the side that is at an angle, because I kept forgetting that. And then I would end up with things that didn't print quite nicely. And there we go. So you could color in those leaves if you wanted with, whatever kind of coloring medium you've got, and you have a little image for the fall. Now this one, even though the Eiffel Tower is drawn here in the pencil because that's how it transferred, I can use that as my lines to carve the Eiffel Tower. Now my finger is in a very dangerous zone right there. These blades are sharp. They should be about as sharp as an X-Acto blade, a fresh X-Acto. And if they're not, you're not going to get much cutting done, but you're also going to be in danger of hurting your finger. And I'm having trouble in this small size remembering on every single cut to make sure I'm pointing it somehow away from myself. That just seems to be something my brain is not connecting with. And hopefully, in a very short order, I will remember the accidents I had in college, and my hand will just start to naturally start doing things right. But you can see I am in the danger zone. So be very careful. Think about your design and which way you could use the tools so that you don't end up making a mess of your hand. So here I'm adding in a few little lines at the bottom for either people or trees. I don't know what it's going to be. And decided I would print it just to do a test print first. And once you do a test print, then you can see where you need to maybe improve something, tighten up something. It might be an area that needs to be lowered that wasn't low enough. If you had a bunch of lines in the Eiffel Tower, you'd know which ones to get rid of so you can recarve them. So I did a little bit of that on the bottom, but I also took a very sharp pencil and I used a hard pencil. This is important because your soft pencils aren't going to do as great a job of this, but get it really sharp and just stab at it to make stars. Think about other tools that you might have around your studio that you might try on your eraser and see if it can make a kind of mark that you want. So second test print, see how this one goes. And the bottom looks funky. So what do I do with that? I cut it off. Unfortunately, I cut it off camera. I didn't realize I wasn't holding it in front of the camera. I just took a pair of scissors and whacked off the bottom section. So here we go with putting a background in because I wanted to do a two-tone print. And I've printed just a blank eraser, one that didn't have anything carved into it. Printed that in pink, and then over top of it, I'll print my Eiffel Tower. And that should give me a pink Eiffel Tower and pink sky with just using a blank eraser as the color in it and get a layered look. So that was pretty cool. And think about all the patterns you could layer underneath of things too. There's just an unlimited supply of creativity that you could bring to eraser block printing. I still need to carve the For You design as well as show you the sharpening. But before I do, I want to invite you to a couple things. One is on September 1st, I'm going to be launching a new class called 30 Days of Pink Eraser Art. And this is perfect for beginners. You don't have to know anything about it. I'm going to start easy and we'll work our way up to complexity in the class. But I'm going to keep the price down on the class because #inflation. And I'm going to do that by only putting video in the first lesson. And I'll show you a bunch of little tips in that first lesson. We'll make a whole bunch of sample types of erasers so that you can get used to it. And then in the rest of the lessons, I'll provide you with the designs, both the positive and the negative, and which way you might consider carving your own. And you can decide what you want to do with it. You can also decide you want to do a different design than I've done that day. But I'm going to take them from the pages that I've already designed in my sketchbook. So I'm excited to get some of these fleshed out and carved. And I think that'll be fun. Also, on September 5th, which is a Friday night, at Art Venture. We're going to have a Zoom call, and we're calling it a pajama party, and we're going to kick off the holiday season of making art. So whether you make cards, or whether you're making some gifts, you're crocheting something, you're coloring stamped images, or you're doing your homework for pink eraser art, you can join us. It's free. It's free to join Art Venture, where you can RSVP, find out the time that it is in your time zone, and you can join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Links for Art Venture and for the class are in the doobly-doo, and the free pre-class lesson has links for the supplies that you'll need for class, but really all you need is some tools to carve with and some erasers. All right, let's get back to carving. Reminder that anytime you're doing anything with letters or that needs to face one way or the other, then you need to make sure you're using the tracing paper technique. If you're just drawing straight onto the eraser, it's going to come out backwards. So here I'm doing a good job of not pointing that tool at my finger for once. Yay me. Hopefully by the time I get 30 of these erasers done, I will no longer be putting my fingers in danger. But I'm outlining the area that I want to carve out, and that's going to be the clear area around the 4. So I'm going to go all the way around the box, and then I'll go all the way around the 4. And once I get that outline done, I can start using a bigger tool to start carving out some of the area in between. Now, you might find that you just want to keep using that small tool over and over and over again. Just be careful that you don't end up digging a hole to China through your eraser. Learning to use the bigger ones is going to be good eventually, but that might not be possible for some designs. And here I'm using the bigger one to make the U, and I turned the eraser rather than the tool. Sometimes one way, sometimes the other. Whatever way works for you is great. Some people say that you always have to turn the tool and not the eraser, and vice versa. So I say, do what works. So now let's talk about keeping your tools sharp. And that requires a slipstrop. Flexcut makes this one, and the one that came with my tool set that I bought wasn't this complicated. It had fewer options, so I bought the full slipstrop. Comes with a crayon, that yellow crayon that you saw, which is a polishing compound. And then it has this leather pad on the bottom. It has all different kinds of parts on it that you can use for different areas of sharpening your tools. They have a great handout that explains everything. But you need to sharpen both the outside and the inside. So you need to test and see which of these little mountainous shapes fits both the size and the shape of the tool that you're sharpening. And all you do is put the compound on and run the tool over it 4, 5, 6 times. And I kind of test it out to see, does it feel like it's sharp enough to hurt me? And if it's sharp enough to hurt me, then it's sharp enough to cut my eraser or my linoleum block. But you can use either side for doing the sharpening of the bevel at the end of the tool. If your bevel disappears, you can use an oil stone on it. Eventually, I guess every tool must reach that limit, but if you keep them polished, you won't have to do that. But I will have an oil stone video as well in the class, and I'll do more detail on this tool as well, so that you can have lots of information on how to take care of your tools. It's recommended to do a polishing on any tool that you've used once you've used it for about 20 to 30 minutes. Yes, I said 20 to 30 minutes. Don't go using it for months and wonder why it's not cutting anymore. If you take care of it regularly, it will last longer. If you'd like to see some of my reject pink eraser carvings, join me over on Substack. There's always something super fun in the free section of my Substack post. And then there's always more information in the paywalled portion as well. But the paywall doesn't go up until September. So you can still go over and check it out and see what's cooking on my Substack. I will see you in a couple days with block printing on linoleum for part 2 of this series. So make sure you're subscribed if you haven't yet. Hit the like button on your way out, and I'll see you later. The links for supplies, as well as everything else mentioned in this video, are in the doobly-doo, which is the description down below the video. So check that out. If you have any questions, leave me comments, especially let me know what we should carve in the new class. I'll see you later.